All right, welcome everybody to what is the ASLH Awards program and why should I apply? Today's webinar, we are glad to have you with us. We are recording today's webinar, and so we'll be sending that out to you as a link after the webinar is over. So you can have it to refer back to or to share with your friends and colleagues. We hope that you will let more people know about the awards program and feel free to share that as well. Um, just a few housekeeping items. Most of you have found the chat box. That is how you will communicate with us. We encourage you to talk to us with comments, post your questions as we're going along. And so again, you do that by typing in the white box on the lower left-hand side of your screen, hitting the little cartoon balloon, and then that will post your comment or question. I do and strongly encourage you to close out all other windows going to the internet, including your email. Sometimes bandwidth can cause some problems with audio. So if we start getting choppy, something like that, that's probably a bandwidth issue from your computer, and closing out all those extra windows helps with the quality of your sound. If you are hearing an echo, that means you may have logged in twice. So be sure to close the second window, and that should fix your echo problem. Again, we are recording, so you will get this after the webinar is over. And we do encourage questions throughout the program, as well as we will have a question and answer period after the presentation ends. So we encourage you to do that. I am Bethany Hawkins. I'm Chief of Operations. I'm here at the American Association for State and Local History. We are located in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's kind of dreary and rainy today, but it's supposed to be 65 on Thursday, so we're excited about that. Also joining me today on the webinar is Nick Hoffman. He is our National Awards Chair, and he is with the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis. So Nick, do you want to say hi?
How are all of you doing? You should check out our website, mohistory.org. We have a new brand, hashtag find yourself here. It's been a busy week.
Yes, he told me after I loaded the slides that they had changed their brand. So we want to, the Missouri History Museum is now the Missouri Historical Society. So check out there.
And I will add, it is mild 30s outside, freezing cold in my office, as usual.
All right, so our goals for our webinar today is just to introduce you to the Leadership in History Awards program if you're not familiar with it, to talk about the different categories where we offer awards, and talk about some requirements that are needed for submitting awards in those categories. We want to answer the question that you might have is, why should I apply for the awards program? We want to answer, how can I apply? Gives tips for a successful nomination. And the biggest thing we want to do is to encourage history organizations from all states and of all sizes to participate. We know that people are doing good history throughout the country, and you don't need a big budget to do good history, and we want to be able to recognize that. So we're hoping that we encourage all history organizations to apply for our awards program.
All right, well, this is a really wonderful awards program. It's a great way to highlight the work that you're doing in your organizations, in your states, and what we're collectively doing at the national level. There's so much great work happening in our history museums, and I think we can all agree that history is more relevant than ever in our lives. So we want to recognize that work. AASLH bestows Leadership in History Awards to establish and encourage standards of excellence in the collection, preservation, and interpretation of state and local history in order to make the past more meaningful to all Americans. By publicly recognizing superior and innovative achievements, the Leadership in History Awards serve as an inspiration to others in the field. So when we're looking at these awards, it's great to think about your projects and how they might be innovative. What are some things that we might be able to learn from that innovation within the field? We award certainly organizations that reflect best practices, and we look at that as a very fluid thing. Best practices are always changing in the field, so we're looking for projects that are maybe testing that boundary of best practices. And then something that we'll talk about a little bit later, we want to recognize good history, especially as it relates to all of our aspirational goals at the American Association for State and Local History. So the AAS Leadership in History Awards almost everyone who applies, I'll get to that in a second, but almost everyone who applies will be initially applying for an award of merit. So that is probably all of you who are listening to this webinar. That is our base award. And from that, we have several other more specific awards that we on the awards committee from our regional representatives can give out at our discretion. That is the Albert B. Corey Award and the History and Progress Award, or the HIP Award. And we'll go into more details what those involve later. And lastly, this is a very special process, and we'll talk a little bit more about it as we move along, but we also give the Award of Distinction, and that is a very special award that we give to someone who has greatly influenced our field. And so that's an award that does not always get awarded each year, but it is that one that's outside of the award of merit. A lot of people get that one confused with our individual achievement, and we'll talk about the delineation between those two later.
And we do give the Award of Merit in several different categories, and we will go into detail in these, but you can see on your screen publications, exhibits, special projects, civic engagement, public programs, multimedia, and individual achievement. For all of the nominations, when you're submitting your nomination, you do have to write a nomination narrative. They're basically the same questions for all categories. Publications is a little bit different, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is your case, your chance to really make your case. Your narrative should advocate as for why this project should receive an award. Why is it good history? You want to be sure that you address impact on your organization and on the community that you serve. I always suggest that you have somebody else read through your narrative to make sure that you've actually answered all the questions. Sometimes that can be a bit of a hiccup that can be easily prevented by just having somebody else look at it. So those are the base level of the categories. And we will talk a little bit about critical letters or letters of critical review in a moment, but that is another thing that is required in all categories are letters of critical review. So you want to be sure that you get those. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So if you're interested in submitting those, probably what you're going to want to start on first. And we'll get into a little bit of detail on the letters later in the webinar. So what I want to do now is go through each of the categories and talk a little bit about what you should be looking for or thinking about when you're submitting your narrative. And all the photographs that you'll see are sample award winners from years past, most of them from 2017. Some go a little further back. So publications are a little bit different. They have a separate application process. So they have, when you're on our website, be sure you're clicking the right one if you're submitting for a publication. That can be print or online publication, but not website. That's different. So be sure that you are on publications if that's what you are submitting for. We do require that 2 copies of the publication in hard copy, if it was a hard copy publication that you're wanting us to review, that those be sent to your state team leader. That information can be found on our website as to where you need to send those. It's very important if you're wanting us to award that hard copy that we actually get to look at the hard copy. It's also important that your publication include either a works cited page or a bibliography and either footnotes or endnotes. That is just good history, and that we'll be looking for that in a publication. If your publication does not include that and you want to reach out to us and explain why, you can contact your state team leader and your regional representative and start that conversation. But we are looking for works cited or bibliography page and notes. We also want to know what impact your publication has made. Not just that you published a really good book, but that we'll be asking, number of copies printed, number of copies sold, and ask for some information on actual impact. And Nick, as I'm talking through these categories, feel free to jump in if there's anything you want to add.
Sounds great.
All right. One of our largest categories is exhibits. That's because most history organizations do some sort of exhibits throughout the year. And so we like to see those exhibits. Be sure you're taking really good, clear photographs. This is a good example from the Jewish Museum in Milwaukee of a nice photograph. Take some faraway shots as well as some close-ups so we can have an idea of what the exhibit looks like, because but chances are no one who is reviewing your nomination is going to be able to come to your museum to actually see the exhibit in person. So you're telling the story through your photographs to make the case for your exhibit. Be sure to include floor plans, sample copy of labels, a representative list of artifacts. We also want to see the list of resources consulted as you are putting the exhibit together. So where is your history based? Answer that question. And we want to know who the audience is for the exhibit, as well as some evaluation uh, feedback from
I
you.
always describe the awards process sort of like applying for a grant. Most of us who will, actually the vast majority of us who will be doing the final judging and review in May, we've never been to your exhibit. We probably have read through the publication ahead of time. We have looked at as much materials as you can offer. So when you have the opportunity to do some attachments to your application, if you can describe and illustrate things through photographs, make sure you have those floor plans. You want to give us as much of a concise idea as you can of what the exhibit was like, what the publication program was like, so we can really, really dive into it and make a fair decision.
Yeah,
Think
that's
of it
good.
as a grant. You want to explain concisely, but give us enough detail to really make a good decision.
Yeah, that's great, Nick. And everything that I am telling you about these individual categories is in print on our website. So um, don't stress out about having to remember all this stuff. Just be sure that you're reading through the guidelines carefully, and following them, and that will help. But these are some things that I know usually come up in the review, and so we wanted to highlight them as we were going through these different categories. All right, the next category can be a bit confusing, and it is civic engagement. And this category was designed to encourage community engagement and civil dialogue from both sides of contemporary history issues. So this might have several components. It can include an exhibit with some community discussions, maybe a public program that resulted in an archive, something like that. A good example here is the Orlando History Center with their One Orlando Collection Initiative. And this is where they started going out and collecting immediately after the Pulse nightclub shooting that took place in Orlando, and how they incorporated that into exhibits, collecting, created a special collection for it, and actively went out into their community. So that's a really good example of a civic engagement project. Um, it is important that you have some evaluation and community impact statements if you are submitting for civic engagement. You want to not just tell what you did to the community, but we want to hear what the impact was from the community members you were talking to. That's especially important when you're talking about civic engagement. Special projects is another category that can be a little bit confusing, and really the short answer to that and as to what goes in a special project is projects that have multiple aspects. For example, you may have an exhibit with a catalog and a public program, and you're wanting to submit all three of those things. So that would go into the special project category, so that the project could be looked at as a whole, instead of just looking at the exhibit or just looking at the publication. It's important to keep in mind if you're submitting a special project that may have several different components, that you submit the required elements from those specific categories. For example, if you're submitting a nomination for something that has an exhibit with a catalog, you want to be sure you're submitting the photographs, the floor plans, the sample label copy that we ask for exhibits, as well as the 2 copies of the book for publications, those types of things. So be sure that if you're doing a special project that you look at the different components required. And also a special note on this, sometimes we get historic preservation projects. If you have a historic preservation project that is going to come in under a special project, and if it is dealing with a structure, we do require a letter from your state historic preservation office saying that it meets the national standards for historic preservation as set aside by the Secretary of Interior. So you want to be sure that if you're planning on submitting a historic preservation project, that you are in touch with your state historic preservation officer. All right. This is a project here from Nick's neck of the woods there in St. Louis. Um, Public programs, that's pretty self-explanatory. Those are programs that you do for the public. It can be educational programs or it could be something adult programming, multi-generational programming. We do want to see evaluation data for public programs. Um, I've said a lot about evaluation, and having it here in public programs is very, very important. We also want to
I'll
see
say
sample materials and photographs. Go ahead, Nick.
I'll say two things about this program. One, I was wickedly jealous of it. I should have thought of it first. But also, this is a really great example of really thinking about how to build a really strong nomination. We do require some sort of evaluation for programs as we do a civic engagement, but really any nomination, having that extra data and evaluation of who visited, what were the demographics, what were their feedback, what type of responses did they have, can you document some sort of a paradigm shift, really makes it strong. And this program, I remember distinctly, had a wonderful evaluation system that they could actually track people having a paradigm shift about the topics throughout their program. So having that type of data and seeing that type of community response extremely well documented made this particular nomination extremely strong. So best practices in our generation of museums is constant evaluation, documenting how it made a change for your community, how you worked with the community, and We Are St. Louis definitely delivered that. So that's the type of stuff that you should be thinking of as you build a strong evaluation or a strong nomination.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Multimedia is another category that we offer. This can be a website, a documentary film, something like that, something that is multimedia in nature. Um, if you're submitting something that is a DVD, you're going to need to send us hard copies of the DVD. Like we asked for publications, there'll be 2 copies of those that will be sent to your state team leader. Um, we also want to see a bibliography or statement of works for your website, um, that or documentary. That's important. We need to know where your history is coming from, what your research has shown, and it doesn't have to be something that's public, but we would like to see works cited or works consulted. So evaluation data is also asked for, especially if you're doing a website. Think about number of hits, number of unique visitors, those types of things. And also think about your technology. Are you submitting something that is current in technology and current in what you would consider best accepted practices in technology? And so that is um, important. So I see we've got a question from Ben about a 10-episode annual show of a public television series. Should they submit one episode or multiple episodes? That's a good question. We also get that question a lot in publications with journals. Um, and the question kind of goes back to you as to what you want us to award. If you want us to award the series as a whole, then we would need to see um, the 10 episodes. If you're wanting us to award just one episode, then it would be the one. So that may be a little confusing, but it's the same thing with a journal. If you're wanting us to award the entire journal, we would need several um, episode or several copies of the journal. Or if it's just one standalone, we would just award the standalone um, special issue. For example, several years ago, the Kentucky Historical Society did a special issue of their journal on Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, and so they submitted just that one issue of their publication, and that was what got the award, not their journal as a whole. Now, if you have been doing something for several years, whether it is a public television series or publishing a journal, be sure in your narrative that you answer the question, why is this coming up for an award now? For example, is it your 10th anniversary? Have you done 100 episodes of this show? Or if it's something that is ongoing, why is it coming for a Leadership in History award now? We also do individual achievement, and this is one of my favorite ladies who has won the Individual Achievement Award. She was well into her 90s when she got it, and was the local historian in her town. Um, so much like we just discussed with the journals and the uh, multi-episode television series, why is this person up for individual achievement award now? Why is it appropriate now that this person be given the award? We want to know how his or her community has been improved by their work in history. Um, could be history organizations, or just maybe they're the local historian and they do a lot of writing. But how have they impacted their community? And we would like to see sample works and a resume for what they do. And Nick will talk a little bit in a minute about the Individual Achievement Award versus the Award of Distinction. Um, but chances are most people that you're thinking of nominating are going to come in under the Individual Achievement category. And the questions that we ask for that are a little bit different because we're not looking at an organizational type award, but it is going to an individual. All right, so Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about the other awards that we give?
So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we have several other awards that we give selected from the body of Award of Merit nominations. And so one of those awards is the Albert B. Corey Award. It is given out at the discretion of the committee. It, as I had mentioned, must have been approved for an award of merit. And the special thing about this award is that the institutions must be all volunteer who receive this award. And I will say for this, what really makes this awards program, I think, very unique for museums is that each year some of the best projects that come forward and a lot of our award recipients come from small museums. That's actually where I made my start and received several AASLH awards from. That's when I started first serving on this committee. So we really do look for volunteer organizations because a lot of them are driving that innovation and implementing a lot of best practices in the field. So the Albert B. Corey Award is one way that we can recognize some of those that just rise a little bit more to the top for those awards of merits. And this comes with a $500 award, which is always wonderful, especially at a small museum. The HIP Award, which is the History and Progress Award, is also given at the discretion of the committee and also must have been approved from an award of merit. This one is given to the nominations that really demonstrate creativity, diversity, and inclusion and meet our AASLH aspirational philosophies to the best. These are the top awards that are given out for the top projects that we received for the Award of Merit nominations. There is not a monetary award. You get a high five and the recognition of all your peers, but it really is truly an honor to be considered one of those top projects for the entire year. So it's really an honor for our committee to give out these two awards that further our distinctions within our Award of Merit program.
Yeah, and Nick, the HIP is given to 5% or less of the total number of Award of Merit winners. So on average, we give between 2 and 4 per year of the HIP awards.
And next, this is separate from the Individual Achievement Award. This is the AASLH Award of Distinction. And as we had mentioned earlier, this is given very infrequently. It's only in recognition of long and very distinguished individual service in the field of state and local history. And they specifically are on the national level. To nominate for this an individual for this award, please contact the National Awards Chair, me, by February 1st. So we have a very small timeline to for anyone who might be nominating someone for this award. A great example, and I think we all recognize the national importance of Lonnie Bunch. He was our 2017 Award of Distinction recipient. He was the founding director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. But we not only delivered the award or gave him the award for being the founding director, but also for his larger body of work. So Lonnie is a really great example of the type of individuals who receive this award.
All right. So we've been talking a lot about all the work that you have to do to apply for an AASLH award. So you may be sitting there asking yourself, well, why should I apply for an award? One is it brings the national spotlight to your organization. We spend a lot of time throughout the year finding ways to highlight award winners whether it's on our website, through our blogs, in our magazine and history news, um, through sessions at our annual meeting, which Nick started a lightning round session where award winners got to present about their projects last year. Um, there's just various ways to bring attention to your organization. We also provide you with sample press releases, and when the awards are announced and then presented, is when ASLH gets the most hits on the Google News feed, because people should get shared through local newspapers and websites all over the country. So it's really a good way to get your name out there and to let folks in your community know that you are doing award-winning work that has been recognized by a national association. A lot
It
of
is a
times, oh, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead,
if
Nick.
you had someone, a funder from the community, maybe a community foundation or an individual gift for an exhibit, what an incredible thing to go back to them and share that you received a national peer-reviewed award, because I guarantee that that's going to encourage them to keep giving to your organization. So a lot of folks have been able to leverage this award to receive more funding, more community support, and really demonstrate that your organization is doing really great work for its community.
That's right, Nick. And it also, a lot of us in small history organizations, that's also where I got my start, um, seem to work alone. We're in a small organization. There may be one or two staff members. We may not see other people in our field very often. It's nice to have your peers give you a pat on the back and really recognize that you're doing great work, whether you're paid staff, whether you're a volunteer. It's just some recognition from your peers. It also is a great reason why you should apply for the award. And Nick already mentioned that it does help with your credibility with stakeholders and funders, especially if they funded the project that you got the award. And then we've talked a little bit already that it is a great way to market your institution. So if you're interested now and you want to apply for an award, some things to keep in mind. Nominations are always due March the 1st. So that is your deadline. That is the date that you need to keep in mind. We're doing this webinar about 2 months out because it does take a little bit of time to put all the pieces together to put together an award nomination. So go ahead and circle March 1st in red on your calendars. All the nominations instructions are available on our website. And Asia Bain, who is also hanging out here with us on the webinar off mic, is going to throw that link up there. She says hi. And she works a lot with our awards program and very much loves it. So, Asia, if you can throw that link to the awards program on the website up there, all the nomination instructions that you need should be there. If you have a state team leader, we encourage you to use the state team leader. They are there to help you in the awards process. They can give you advice, help you with finding folks to write letters of critical review, give you some feedback on your nomination materials, things like that. So be sure to contact your state team leader early and let them help you. You also have a regional team leader, so if by chance your state doesn't have a state team leader, you can contact your regional. All their contact information is available on our website. And here is how you submit. You will submit online. So everything is submitted online for our awards program now. So you can start off by downloading the nomination instructions and reading them very carefully, probably multiple times, just like you would do for a grant project. Read them very carefully. And again, there is a separate nomination form and separate instructions if you are submitting a publication. So step 2 would be to find your state team leader and reach out to them and talk about your nomination, get their advice, get their help. And so you can find that information, again, on our website. We also have just put up a new manual, so if you don't want to go through all the different pages on the website, there's a couple of places from the website where you can just download that manual and print it off as a PDF, and it has everything sort of in one spot. So that's new for this year, but you can find that on our awards page. Step 3 would be that you submit your form online, and you start that, and it will take you out of our website into a website called Submittable, and then it will ask you to create a username and password That is not the same username and password that you may have used for our ASLH website. Although I guess you could make it that, but you would have to set one up if you've not already done so through other ASLH projects. You can save your project and return to complete it or review it at a different time. So it's not like you log in once and have to submit everything at that time. You can go and do it in pieces and review it, things like that. And in fact, your state team leader will start reviewing it after the March 1st deadline, and they may even come back to you and say, okay, we need to tighten up the narrative. I need some more photographs, things like that. So you will still have, you may need to be asked to go back in and make some changes even after the March 1st submission. Once you're in there and you have started working on your narrative questions and making sure we have the right name to put on the certificate or names, all that information up, you will upload your supporting documentation. That includes your letters of critical review, any documentation items such as photographs, bibliographies, floor plans, sample label text, evaluation information. And then you have an additional section. So if you want to share with us maybe a newspaper article that was in your local newspaper about your exhibit or project, anything else, you have up to 5 pages that anything else you want to share with us. Again, with publications and DVDs, you have to send 2 of those hard copy to your state team leader. And as you're working, be sure to know that you can save your work and return to it later, but make sure you note what your login information is, because we are not able to retrieve that for you. And Asia would have to do some magic to get you in touch with the submittable folks. So be sure that you write that down.
All right, so how will my nomination be reviewed? I'm sure you're all wondering that. The first step, and Bethany had already touched on that, is it's going to first be reviewed by your state team leader. And really, they're there to help you prepare your nomination. So as she mentioned, you should already be reaching out to your state team leader, talk about your project. They can help you find ways to strengthen your narrative and talk about whether it is a good fit for this awards program. So reach them first. They're sort of the first individuals who will be reviewing this, helping you strengthen it, and then eventually submitting it on March 1st to the regional representatives who are the core of our awards committee, who will meet in Nashville for 3 days and review all of the nominations. But you want to make sure that you're thinking about the types of questions that they may have. So again, write very deliberately, very concisely, because you want to make sure that the judges are very well informed once they get ready to review each nomination. So we meet as a committee. We actually go through and review every single nomination. We vote on it as a group, and that's how we end up making our decision by majority. So the national review will happen in May. It's a lot of exhausting work, so I want to thank all of our regional representatives who participate in the review. But again, they want to be seeing those types of arguments about what makes your project support best practices, innovation, etc. And so our criteria that we look for, one of the really big things is it good history? And I'm going to share that link with all of you in the chat. And we'll go over these big points. These are the main things that we look at for each of these projects. And we built our definition of good history based on AASLH's aspirational philosophy. And you'll see on that PDF that there is a link that you can go to where you can actually see the philosophy laid out. But the points of good history that we're looking at is that good history promotes the relevance of history, that showcases how the public can make use of the past in discussions of the present and future. Good history embraces complicated history and discourages nostalgia by reflecting current scholarship, grounding the work in primary source research, and providing a genuine contribution to the understanding of history. Good history acts to build diversity and inclusiveness through interpretation that considers race, ethnicity, gender, social class, and geography, and is provocative through presenting contested history and multiple perspectives. Good history cultivates an experimental and creative spirit as a source for imaginative problem solving, exploring new approaches and resourcefulness, while also looking to others for inspiration. Projects that extend the mission of an organization, demonstrate risk-taking, and offer activities outside conventional boundaries will merit greatest consideration. And finally, good history attempts to be accessible to wide audiences with differing learning styles, abilities, and interests in history. The great thing about that PDF is you will find for every one of those points examples from past award winners with some description of why they received that award. So we give you some really concrete examples from your peers, museums, very large and all volunteer. And so you can kind of base your narrative and why you might be applying based on maybe some of the success that these organizations have had in the past. Now, you don't have to meet all of these bullet points, but just like when you're writing a grant, when you know what your grant, what the possible funders are looking for, it's always good to mention how your project might relate to those key points. So this is a really good tool that you can use to sort of reflect on as you write your nomination. And again, we're looking for an example that is more than just business as usual. This is a term that maybe is a bit overused, but we're looking for organizations that might be stretching themselves. They might have had really creative ways to find in-kind support for their project. This might be something totally new that they're doing. And so we're looking for how that organization is sort of stretching beyond that business as usual. We're also, of course, looking for things that are very community driven. We hope that a museum is not sort of operating in an echo chamber just between themselves, they're a board and their very specific interests. How does this relate to the needs of your community? We're also, of course, looking for new interpretations of history. How might a project add to our understanding of history at the local, state, or national level? So these are all really great things to think about as you build that type of nomination. And of course, is this a model for the field? That's something that we always ask ourselves, especially when it's a very close vote. We're always thinking about, is this something that as an organization we feel very strongly getting behind, and that it's a model for museums large and small to really build our philosophy and support what we do as a broader organization. And so, of course, there's also other specific criteria that you'll be requested to point out in each category.
And Nick, I'll also point out that the awards are not competitive. So we don't just give
Yes.
5 exhibit awards per year. If we got 50 nominations for exhibits that met these criteria, were exceptional models, were exceptional at good history, we would give 50 awards. So
Yep.
you're basically competing against yourself. So that's why it's so important that your nomination make the case, and that you are providing us all the information that we ask for. Because like I said, we want to see those good history projects awarded. So there's not a set number that we give.
Yeah, one of the great things that we get to do each year is we get to show a very large number of museums that are doing really leading great model projects for the field. On the local and state level, there's, of course, wonderful benefits to your organization. Nationally for AASLH, it is so wonderful that our organization can hang our hat on all of these projects, that they are living the mission and philosophy of our organization. We do have some tips in addition to what I just shared for a successful nomination. Again, already, start working with your state team leader when you're starting to already build your nomination. I would say the most important piece of any nomination is the letter of critical review. These are really the things that we go to the most because, again, we don't have an opportunity to go and see your exhibit or your program that had already happened. So those letters of critical review are what we use as our eyes on the ground to really learn if this project is demonstrating really great use of primary sources, if it's reflecting historiography, if it's really meeting the needs of the community. And so these are letters of critical review. That means that a good letter of critical review is not going to be just a glowing report of how wonderful your organization is or how wonderful that individual is for an individual achievement award. These should not be somebody from the Tourist Bureau. It shouldn't be a volunteer within an organization. Sometimes we see letters of critical review that are actually written from a board member's perspective. That is automatically disqualifying. It should not be a mayor. What we recommend is working with your state team leader to help you identify people in your region who might be able to do a review. You can look to your local community colleges, larger state universities, maybe a neighboring museum, someone who might be familiar with local history, like a curator. But you want someone who can really address critically the merits of your project and how it relates to good history. So those letters of critical review, for a lot of the nominations, that's going to be the most important part of your package. Less is more important. Again, be clear and concise, but also if you have an opportunity, like you might for exhibits, to add all those things like floor plans, photographs, definitely take advantage of adding some of those other materials that might help strengthen your nominations. And of course, meet the deadline. That's going to be the biggest thing. March 1st is going to come a lot quicker than we're all thinking. And so now, again, is a great time to meet with your state leaders by phone or in person, and definitely start reaching out to people who might be willing to write a letter of critical review for you.
All right, we did
It
have a
looks like
question
we have a question.
about.
How many letters of critical review are recommended? We ask for 2 letters of critical review. And another thing I should point out with these is that a review that appeared in something like the Journal of American History, that is a peer-reviewed journal, that type of a review also is accepted as a letter of critical review if it comes from a peer-reviewed journal. So you might want to throw that in, and maybe another letter of critical review. We've had some past applications that have put in an additional third letter of critical review if they thought it really strengthened their nomination or added a different perspective to their project. But that would go in your additional materials.
All right, well, we have hit the high points of the ASLH Leadership and History Awards. We hope that we have encouraged you to submit a nomination and to encourage your fellow history organizations in your state and area to submit nominations. So now we're going to open it up for questions. So feel free to type your question in the chat box, and we will just take time to see what questions you have. Um, and again, everything that we told you today in today's webinar is available in print on our website. I see that multiple attendees are typing. I will go ahead and switch to the next slide, even though we'll keep it open for questions for a little while. But you can see there's my contact information, the link to the awards page, and the link to the state team leaders. Before and after pictures of the exhibit space. You could include before pictures, but that if we're evaluating the exhibit themselves, I don't know that it's really necessary to include before pictures unless you're talking about a renovation of an exhibit. Um, so that would sort of be your call on that. But sure, we could, you know, I would probably say the more the better, as long as they're well organized, so that we can are sure to and labeled so that we know before what you're before and what you're after.
Yeah, if it's coming from a small volunteer museum that again is stretching themselves and developing a whole new core gallery, that might be a good argument to make that you've really grown as an organization from before and now after.
And Brian from Boston has a good question. Can nominations be for collaborative programs among museums and non-museums that have a role in interpreting the historical topic involved? And the answer is absolutely. We like to see collaborative projects. We'd like to see people working with people outside the museum field. So absolutely. And we have had as many as 25 names on a certificate. Well, we actually we created it where it wouldn't be 25 names, but we gave out 25 certificates. So yes, we will include multiple people and institutions on a certificate. Um, and love collaborative projects.
And I would say a collaborative project would be probably very strong because that means you're listening to community needs, you're working with the community directly. That would be something I think we'd be really excited to receive is a collaborative project.
Okay, so we have a question. I'm not sure I completely understand it. Our public program has expanded considerably due to the success of last year's event. Could this future endeavors for this year be included in this year's application? Um, the
What time
event,
of year was it? Because if it was last year, it might still fit within the timeline. So the question, as I think it stands, could be sort of irrelevant.
yeah, because it would have to be March 1st is the deadline, so the project would have to have taken place within the 18 months prior to March 1st, 2018. So if you're talking about something coming up this year, after March 1st, you probably want to hold that for the 2019 awards. Did we answer your question, Jason? If not, maybe you want to put some follow-ups there.
Yeah, we're awarding for 2017 for this particular one
Yeah.
or round.
All right. Let us know what other questions you have. We've got some more time. Um, and again, lots of this information is available on our website. So be sure to spend some time on the awards section of our website. I see several folks are typing their questions, so we will give them time to type. Oh, that's an excellent point, Elizabeth. She said it's good to plan ahead for 2019 because it's a lot easier to get letters of critical review while a temporary exhibit or program is ongoing. And that is an excellent plan. If you have a temporary exhibit up, get your critical review letters while it's up because those are much easier to write.
And we should all strive to do evaluations while an exhibit is up, for instance, or a program is happening, so you can make sure that's happening too while you think of a 2019 project.
There's some more typing going on. Okay, Lauren, if you're not opening your exhibit until March 1st, it would not count for this year's awards program because you won't be able to have any evaluation data for your audience. So you should save that for the 2019 awards. And the award nomination forms will be up by November. And again, the deadline will be March 1st, 2019.
Nice, and I would definitely invite some people who could write letters of critical review to that March 1st opening.
Absolutely. All right, Harry's got a question about the criteria about not being nominated for lifetime achievement. Harry, can you clarify if you're talking about individual achievement or award of distinction? Because the criteria will be different. So can you clarify? Individual achievement. Generally, they're coming to the end of their career. I won't say the end of their life, but they're coming to the end of their career. So they have a body of work. They're coming, uh, maybe they're nearing retirement, or if they're a volunteer who has been retired, they're reaching some sort of milestone. So it's generally viewed as a capstone type award. Um, we don't generally give it to people who are just starting um, in the field. They may, if they've written a book, maybe you could submit that as a publication and they can be awarded that way. Um, but for individual achievement, they should be coming toward the end of their career or volunteer service. So Maggie has a question about evaluation. What um, kinds of evaluation are the awards committee looking for? Formal surveys, casual conversations, comments, and an interactive scrapbook in the exhibit. Um, I would say all of the above. If you have formal evaluation, formal surveys, that is excellent. Um, but if you don't have those, comments in a left in a book for the exhibit, Letters that you get back from public program, like educational programs, can count as some evaluation. Um, just that we want to see that you are doing some evaluation of your audience so that we can know what they are thinking about the nomination. I don't know if I made any sense. Nick, do you want to add to the evaluation question?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some really creative ways of doing this. Some folks have submitted evaluations that are extremely high tech using data loggers or cell phone apps. Other folks who are fortunate enough have a full-time evaluator on staff. Other folks have done formal surveys with using all volunteers, and that's been just as equally relevant and well done as any of those more high-tech ways. Casual conversations, we need to see those a little bit more documented. But for instance, on social media, if you have like a hashtag attached to the exhibit, or people are just writing reviews about that exhibit, that certainly is a form of evaluation. And comments in an interactive scrapbook, that's also, I think, a really great way to gather some of those more informal comments, but certainly can help us guide the impact of the exhibit. But people have done all sorts of really creative ways. They've done voting interactives in an exhibit, some sort of sticky note responses to questions. There's a wide variety of ways that you can get this type of data that really measures community impact.
And I'll just add, I think if you're doing some of those more informal evaluations, like comments in a scrapbook or the post-it notes or something like that, um, I wouldn't just include like a list of the comments, but we would like to see that you have done something with those.
Yeah.
So maybe some report that you have put together, maybe for your board or for your future planning, that you have. We're not just looking at evaluations on TripAdvisor, but that you are thinking about those in some meaningful way. If that.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? We've got about 10 minutes or so left, about 9 minutes. So this is your time. If you have questions that you want to ask one of us, we are happy to answer those. Otherwise, we will send you to the website and ask you to spend some time there. Look at all the information we have available for you on the website and start getting in touch with your state team leaders. And we look forward to seeing your nominations um, on March the 1st, seeing all those. And we know there's good history being done in all states. And we just ask that you submit your nominations so we can award those efforts.
Yeah, thank you. And I encourage all of you, whether we hope that you're going to apply, but if you're not, go through all of the past award winners on the AASLH website. There is so much inspiration there. There's so many wonderful trends that you can implement at your museum of whatever size it may be. There's just so much great energy that comes out of this awards program. It's wonderful to have you participate, but also this is a great place for inspiration to fulfill your mission in your communities.
And thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing your nominations.